as if this is your first time
Okay.
and you're not a client,
Okay.
right? I'm gonna break it down as if I'm gonna make you a client today. So what do you have, a term?
Sir.
Okay, you don't have an IUL?
No.
Okay, well, we'll go over all of that. But pretend you don't have a term and this is your first time, and you came back to more or less interested in investing money.
Okay.
Okay, so you're interested, right? That's obviously why you're here, more or less, right? So, so Santiago, I know you're definitely interested in investing your money. You want to see what your options are. So here's what I want to break down for you. Okay, so today what I want to break down is who we are as a company. So the company we represent is WFG, and the way we do business is typically a little bit different than the normal traditional industry. Now here's what I mean by that. So the way we do business is we offer our clients the power of choice. Now, the reason being is because we understand that not all two families are in the same position. Some make more than others, some make less, some have more debt, some have more kids. So we take the approach of making sure we find the right company that'll best suit their needs. And as you can see, we work with over 200 plus product providers. Now, to dive in on the left, right, these are some of the services that these providers offer. So for example, the first one that we help our clients out with is fixed index annuities. So this is more of like a lump sum product. So for example, I like to put people through two scenarios. Let's just say scenario one, we have this person who says, I'm retired, I'm 65, and I have a big lump sum of money. Let's just say he has $100,000. And because he has no idea, he takes this approach. He says, I'm gonna take this 100,000, I'm gonna put it into my bank account, and I hope I'm gonna use this money to retire on, but I hope I never run out. But the question is, based off of his retirement lifestyle, what if he does? So most people in that scenario have a fear of what happens if I run out of money. Do I gotta go get another job? What do I have to do? So scenario two is, let's say we take that same person and put him into a fixed index annuity. Here's what that's gonna do for him. As he rolls over that $100,000, as he's living off of that money for retirement, this account will help him continuously grow that money, so we eliminate that fear of him having to run out, which is a much better scenario, right? And we educate people on how to be in that scenario with one of these type of products. We're also very big advocates when it comes down to life insurance. Here's why. In this case, if I was to ask you, Santiago, God forbid somebody was to pass away, let's just say the Fresno area, what would you say is the average funeral costs?
I would say probably like around 10 to 15,000.
On the money. It's right around 10, 15 to in some cases even up to $20,000, God forbid somebody was to pass. Now where I come from in McFarland, which is a super small town, I would always see GoFundMe accounts, car washes, tamale sales, the whole 9 yards. And the reason being is because someone's gonna get a check for $10, $15 to $20,000. And as we know, most people don't just have that money laying around. Now that's what made me so passionate about the business is, why are people doing these things, right? My assumption is because they lack the knowledge of what's out there, like life insurance, to put them in a much better position, in the position of them inheriting, if not only hundreds, but what if millions of dollars? And that's much better than GoFundMe's and all of that. And our job is to provide that education to get them to see the value in these products, to put them in a better financial situation. Now, we also do long-term care, which is pretty similar, college plans for kids, and in this case, these are some of my favorites because let's do the two scenario thing again. Scenario one, we have a child who is now 18 and the parents tell him or her, hey, because we never saved for your college, now we're gonna go take you to the bank and get your first student loan. That's ideally not the best solution, but now let's do scenario two. What if the parent said, hey, you're 18, but when you were 1, we started this college fund for you. So now that you're 18, the conversation is a lot different. We're not going to go to the bank, but more or less, we're going to go to the perfect school that you want to go to, tuition paid for. Now, again, that's a much better conversation. And I love to do that for clients because I tell my clients, hey, starting something like this, you're now in position to one day having that second conversation with your kids. And I think that's super powerful, right? We also do index universal lives. And here's, I think, one of our more flagship products. And the reason being is because every investor that's looking to invest ideally has two questions. Question number one is I'm looking for something that will grow good rates of return. And number two, when I'm ready to use my money, I want to pay very little to no taxes on my investment. This account, it's so popular because it does both of those things very, very well, right? And we'll break down a little bit more. We also do 401k IRA rollovers, which is putting them into FIAs, executive bonus plans, and much more. So for example, in this standpoint, let's say we have a client who says, hey Zach, all of this is great. Like I like it, it makes sense. I want to save and I want to invest. My biggest issue is because I'm so into debt, I don't have any money to put into my investments. Can you still help me? And the question, of course, is yes. Our job is to help them get out of that debt as fast as possible to now free up more money for them to put into their investments. And based off of that, that's our job. And based off of the summary of this first page, we want to help our clients find the right products, the right companies, the right products, and theoretically help them merge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question to you, Santiago, is there any questions on any of this so far?
So far, no, I don't have any questions.
Awesome. Well, I got a question for you. Okay. So currently, right now, based off of all of this, when it comes down to maybe life insurance, retirement, anything like that, do you currently have anything started? Have you contributed into anything? Do you have any of these services now?
I do not.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Is it because you never really looked into it? Is it you don't really believe in the services? Or maybe you just don't have the proper education?
Proper education.
Right on. So that's what I want to kind of do today. Is give you some more education and show you what your options would be like in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how we do that. Okay. So before we even dive into with a client what products and services will fit them, and before they sign anything, before they become our client, we want to make sure we educate them on the 3 rules of money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first rule we teach our clients is what's called the rule of 72 and the importance of compounding interest. Now, today, Santiago, I want to make you 29 years old.
Okay.
I'm going to write you a check for $10,000. So you take this $10,000 and you say, okay, I want to invest it, and I go to my bank. Because most people do, right? They say the bank knows what to do with my money. They should tell me what to do with it. So you go to the bank with $10,000, you're 29, and the bank will offer you a 1% rate of return if you invest in money with them. So here's how that works. The question you should be asking is, how long is it going to take for my money to double? Which is a great question, and I'm going to show you how. So you take the 1% that the bank gives you, divide that into 72, and that's how many years it's going to take for your initial investment, in this case 10,000, to double one time. So now you're 29, 72 years later, you're 101, and you have $20,000. Would you say that's a good or a bad investment?
I would say that's a bad investment.
Horrible investment, 100%, and I agree with you there. Now, the unfortunate thing is a lot of people are putting their money here. Why? Not because they think the bank is great, but because they have no idea where else to put it. And that's why we're so big on making sure we educate our clients on how to get better rates of return. Because even at a 4%, 4 goes into 72 every 18 years. Eventually, you'll reach the age 65, and you only have $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do most people you think want to do at 65?
I'd say retire.
Yeah, but at 65, if you only had $40,000, would you say that's a good or not so good retirement?
Not good at all.
Exactly. So now let's go 6%. 6 goes into 72 every 12 years. At 65, you only have 80,000. I'm an optimist. That's a lot better than 40. It's much better than 20, but still probably not going to cut it. But what if we found a 12% account? 12 goes into 72 every 6 years. So now the whole point of an investment is for your money to move, grow, and double as much as possible. So now you reach the 65 and you have $640,000. Much better than all 3 scenarios, even combined. Now, if this money doubles one more time at 71, Santiago, you'd be at $1.2 million. Now, here's the thing. At 71, it's probably not the coolest to be a millionaire. So the question is how do I become a millionaire faster? Well, in this case, understanding this will help you. For example, this is if you would have started at the age of 29. What if you started at 18 years old in a 12% account? That just means this type of money is going to come a lot sooner in your life. So the question is, well, how do people retire earlier? Number one, they understand compounding interest and how to use it in their favor, and that's what we teach our clients, right? Is how to take advantage of the right to return, and the earlier you start, the more you're going to have, right? Now this is big. Same thing applies if we have a child who's 1 year old, and they put their money into a 12% account. By the time they're 18, this is how they have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 saved. Right? And this is a huge important concept. So when I'm sitting with a lot of my clients, they say, Zach, I'm already putting $300 to $500 away a month into my normal savings account at the bank. After we break this down, this scenario, the likelihood that they're going to say, awesome, I want to keep it there is very slim to none. So the question at that point, Santiago, is they're usually asking that, and they say, can you help me reallocate my funds into something better? And of course, we want to find the right companies and the right plans to help them reallocate those funds to growing a lot better.
Mm.
And we actually have accounts averaging anywhere between 7 to 8 average, to some of them even capping out at 15 to 25, which is extremely good, right? But now, once you understand that, hey, obviously I want to grow some great rates of return, here's the next rule we teach you, is there's 3 legal ways that money can grow in today's economy.
Mm.
The first one we have is in a fixed rate of return, which is very similar to what we have here. 1% doesn't really do too well. So what people think is they say, okay, well, this is not good. Let me go to my next best option. That next best option is typically through their employer, which is if you work for the state, you most likely have a 403B. If you work for the government, you have a 457. If you're in the Army, you have a TSP. And if you work for a private business, you most likely have a 401k. Now, the way these work here, in this standpoint, is when the market goes up, let's just say 10%, as we know, you'll make good rates of return. But the downside is if the market goes negative 10%, what happens to your money then?
It decreases, it falls.
It decreases, you lose money, right? So for someone young like yourself, ideally it's not going to affect them, right? Because, hey, you have time for that money to come back up. But Santiago, if I'm sitting with the client who says, hey, Zach, I'm 50 years old, I can't afford to have all of my assets being losing 30% negative. So what are they asking for there is there a better solution? And there is. We have something called an indexed account, where the way this works is kind of a hybrid of both fixed and variable. Meaning, imagine you can invest into an account where when you make high rates of return, you keep it. But the best part is when the market goes negative, what if you get locked into a fixed rate and you never lose your initial principal within the investment? So ideally, this type of account is a lot better than the first 2 scenarios. But here's one of the problems that we face, right? Is outside of today, have you ever heard of an indexed account?
Never.
Right. So what that means is, let's just say we never met today. That means most likely in your life, your day-to-day, you're either going to, once you get your established and you have your job, you're either going to go to the bank or you're just going to go to your employer and hope that that's going to be enough, right? And that's where most people are at. And so we unveil the curtain and say, hey, now that you know that there's multiple ways to invest your money, we want to make sure you get to decide where you would rather be, especially as the investor. Now, Santiago, I'm not telling you that these are horrible. What I am telling you is we believe in helping our clients diversify their portfolio. So they don't have all of their eggs just in one basket. But again, the cool thing is everybody understands, I'm sure you understand, that everyone wants to save money now and they'll have money in the future. But now, I like to say, what if you can save money now in the right vehicles to have the most money in the future? And that's what we do. And how do we do that? Again, by giving you that education. But in this standpoint, of course, a lot of people are looking for something indexed, but most people don't even know that they exist. But now that we do, we understand that the 3 ways money grows. Now the third one is the 3 ways that money gets taxed. I think this is probably the most important, and here's why. Because if you find an investment that earns you even 100% rate of return, and it's 100% secure, but Uncle Sam gets to take half of it, what was the point of even investing in the first place?
Right.
So a smart investor understands how to keep their investment, right? So we have 3 ways that your initial investment can be taxed. You have tax now accounts, which is savings, CDs, and stocks. The way these work in this standpoint is you get taxed off of capital gains. So if think about it in your paycheck currently today, right? You get gross and you get net. Gross is what you made, but net is what you actually take home, right? So think of these investments as something like that. Now we have these, which I'm not into particularly fond of for this reason. So let's just say you invest your money into a 401k or any government qualified account, some similar to these. The way it works is the money that comes into the account, let's just say you work at a job, and in your case, you're there, they say, hey, you want to start a 401k? And you're like, yeah, sure. The way it works is they'll tell you how much money out of your check do you want to go into your 401k. Usually, typically, it's around 5% that people put. So they take your 5% out of your gross income, which is the money that hasn't been taxed yet, okay? So they pull that money out, and it grows in a 100% variable market. So now you're 65, all of your assets are here. And let's just say you have $100,000. Now, in the future, the question is, are taxes going to be higher or lower?
Probably higher.
Yes. So now let's look at it from this scenario. you've saved for the next 30 years in your 401k. You haven't paid any taxes on this money. Let's just say you have a lump sum of 100,000. Okay. Now, within that standpoint, you have that 100,000, and you have to pay taxes now. And like we both agreed, taxes are probably going to be higher. So let's just say taxes at 50%. Now you're getting ready to retire. You probably had no idea, but you have to pay taxes now. And taxes at 50%, here's what's going to happen. Uncle Sam's going to say, hey, Santiago, I know you're going to retire. You're 65. Hey, I'm glad you waited to not pay taxes because now I get to take a bigger portion. So I'm going to take 50% of your 100,000 and call it taxes, and you get left over with the extra 50.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're back in this boat over here, which ideally is not the best scenario, right? Now, I'm not here to say 401ks are bad, but what I do think is bad is people that invest into things that they have no idea how they work, right? And in this case, what people are looking for is something tax advantaged, where Roth IRAs, the IUL is talking about an executive bonus plans. So the way these work is, remember, gross and net, okay? So here it gets taken out of your gross income, here it gets taken out of your net income, which is the money that you already been taxed. So net income is what actually hits your bank account. So what if you take the money in your bank account that's already been taxed and you reallocate it into one of these funds? What that means is the money that's going into this account, because it was taxed on the way in, they can't tax it on the way out. And that's the reason why if you invested here and you have that same $100,000, you will actually get to keep your $100,000 and not pay any taxes. And now in this account, you're paying those taxes. So again, a smart investor within this standpoint understands, hey, if I can find an account that averages a rate of return, that grows indexed, and that's tax advantage, ideally that's something that somebody would probably be looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this, right? If we can show you an account that does exactly that, grows within a great rate of return, grows indexed, and also tax advantage, would that be something you'd be open to?
Yes.
Awesome.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, and that's what I kind of want to show you next, okay? Is I'm going to give you a breakdown of what this account looks like and how we kind of go from there, okay? But now, like we talked about, you currently said you have nothing as far as retirement savings, anything like that.
No.
Right? Now, when it comes down to life insurance, what about that margin? Is there any life insurance that you currently have?
Life insurance, I would say I just have a final expense.
Okay, let's say you didn't have nothing like it.
Oh, okay, let's just say no, I don't have anything.
Now, is that something that's important to you?
I would say so. I mean, I never looked into it.
Okay, and that's what I want to break down, okay? And I'm going to go over those two things again. For example, I'm going to dive a little bit into the retirement assets, kind of like this, but I'm also going to dive a little bit deeper into the life insurance aspect again, okay?
Right.
And the way I do that is by breaking down this, which is what's called term and perm, okay? And this is going to help you get a better understanding of where we're at, okay? So, in this case, there's two general types of coverage, okay? So in this case, let me draw my line here. We have our first one, and we have our second one. And the first one we have is term. So here's the way term works, okay, Santiago? So we have a lifespan, of course.
Okay.
And in this lifespan, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm currently 19.
Okay, you're 19 years old. You can get a term plan for 10 years, 20 years, to a maximum of 30 years. Most people in Santiago choose the maximum of 30 years, and here's why. Because typically a mortgage is either between 15 to 30 years of a mortgage, right? Also, let's just say you have some dependents, or we have a client who has kids, right? Most likely you need life insurance when you have the most liabilities, which is a house, kids, people like that, things like that. So if you have a child who's 30 years from now, when your policy is getting ready to expire, your child is probably now age 30. And the question is if you already paid off your house and your child no longer lives in your house, the question is, do you still need, let's just say, $500,000 of life insurance? Most likely not, right? So people are okay with it expiring in 30 years because they no longer have big expenses that, God forbid, you're not around, that need to be taken care of. But now, what I want to do is, because I'm licensed to the state of California, I want to show you the pros and cons of something like this, okay? So at a 30 year, let's just say you're now 50 years old, And that's when the 30 years is up, and now that plan is expired. So, in this case, initially, this type of coverage is initially very cheap. Now, here's what I mean. At age 19, let's just say for even $500,000 of coverage, I would say your monthly premium in something like this would be anywhere between $20 to $30. And initially, that's super cheap. Anyone would trade 20 to 30 bucks to inherit 500,000, right?
Right.
But here's what happens: is we have long term. Long term, these accounts can get pretty expensive. Here's why. In this account, life insurance goes based off of two things: age and health. So if now you're 50, you're a lot older, and who knows what your health's going to be from there. So let's just say your 30 years have gone up, you're 50 years old, and you're like, hey, Zach, you know what? I still want to renew it. Like, I want another 30 years. I want to leave something behind. Now, instead of paying $20 to $30, what if your premium goes up 8 to 10 times? Now, you're going to pay $200 to $300 for an extra 30 years of coverage because you're a lot older, and who knows what your health is at that point, right? So let me ask you this. When do you think is the best time to get life insurance?
Like term life insurance,
Yeah, or life insurance in general, if it goes based off of age and health.
then I would say the younger the better.
Absolutely, right? Because in that concept, that's how you make sure that your premiums are going to be pretty low. The younger and the healthier you are is ideally the best time to get coverage, right?
Mhm.
Now, another thing is there's also no refunds within these accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So because there's no refunds, in that case, there's no savings, which in this case just makes this account pure insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's why me personally, I own this account, and why a lot of my clients have this account. Because there's a component within term that's called living benefits. Now, I'm going to show you why that's so big. But let's just say you have a term plan without the living benefits. You know what the likelihood of you passing away in this 30 years is statistically? It's less than 2%. So it's a less than 2% chance, if you don't have living benefits in your account, that you will pass away within this 30-year margin. Now, the possibility, though, of somebody getting sick, cancer, heart attack, stroke, any of those things, statistically is a lot higher than just death alone.
Mm-hmm.
So what if now you can have an account where you have access to your money without you having to pass away? And I'm going to show you more or less what that means. So then I break this down. So here's how living benefits works, okay? So if you have a term with living benefits, you have access to now 3 riders that comes within your account.
Mm-hmm.
The first rider is a chronic illness rider. That means if you can't do 2 out of the daily 6 living routines, you have access to a percentage of your life insurance. For example, in this case, if you can't do 2 out of the daily 6 living routines, which are bathing, containing liquids, dressing, eating, toileting, and transferring, the company will pay you 24% of your life insurance amount. If you're covered for $1 million, you would get about $240,000 to take care of you for a year.
Mm.
Now, if you get a critical illness, which is cancer, heart attack, stroke, major organ transplant, you have access to 90% of your death benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you get a terminal illness when the doctor says, hey, unfortunately, you only have 12 months to live, the company will actually pay you out 100% of your death benefit while you're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me tell you why that's so big, Santiago. Because the likelihood of any of these things happening to you is so much more higher. Now, a lot of people, they don't like term because it's like, hey, I'm paying for something that I'm probably never going to use, and I understand that, right? But now knowing that if you can add living benefits, there's a higher likelihood in that standpoint that you actually have more access to your money. A lot of clients like that for that scenario alone, right? Now, the second reason I own this and a lot of my clients use it is because of this reason, and here's what I mean. Is typically, if somebody has cancer, heart attack, or any of these conditions, right? The first thing that happens is they lose their job. They lose all they lose some things, right? They need money. And because they no longer work, what do they tend to do? They tend to sell their house. They tend to to maybe go into debt. They tend to, pull from their retirement accounts to keep themselves afloat. Now, the reason why this is so important is because we understand that your investments in your house and all that stuff shouldn't be affected in the case of something like this. So if you have a proper living benefits account, instead of having to draw from accounts that shouldn't be drawn from, now you have your living benefits take care of that aspect. And what this really does for people is crosses their T's and dots their I's to not use assets and things that shouldn't be touched in the case of any of these things happening. And we would prefer that be used through your living benefits term. Does that make sense? So now, that's how term works within that standpoint. Is there any questions on any of that so far?
No.
Now, what I want to break down next, for example, Santiago, is our like the account we're talking about, which is our IUL. Okay, so this is a permanent account, and in this case, I'm going to draw a lifespan again. Okay, and in this case, you're age 19 when you start, and you would be covered all the way till age 121.
Okay.
So, permanent life insurance. So, like we talked about, you get number 1 and number 2, which is the two things that come within this account. Number 1, like we talked about, you're going to have some life insurance. And number 2, you're also going to get a savings component. And the great thing about these savings is, like we talked about, it grows 100% indexed. Okay? Now, here's our first comparison. So now, let's just say you're in the market and you're looking for an account that you can start saving now to have in the future. Let's just say it's between this and a 401k. In a 401k, you don't have any additional life insurance, and the savings that you have in that account is not 100% indexed.
Right.
So, for example, let's just say you have $100,000 in savings in your 401k. It does have a beneficiary, so if you pass away, your family will receive a portion of that money. It still has to get taxed. In this account, let's just say you have that same $100,000 in savings, and you have $100,000 of life insurance.
Okay.
Both. Your family will receive $200,000 100% tax-free, and that's a much better component than just having a 401k, right? But now, just like I did on this side, I want to break down the pros and cons of something like this, right?
Okay.
Or the things you should know. So initially, in an account like this, they have what's called a 10 to 15 year surrender period.
Okay.
Now, what this means, based off of this, is there's 10 or either 15 years. The reason why there's 2 is because depending on what company we're using, they have different surrenders. So let's just say you're 19. We don't recommend that you touch the money within the first 10 to 15 years. Here's why. Your money is growing. And when do you want to use this money? Let's just say you retire at 65 and you pass away at age 90. You don't want to touch the money here so that you can have the maximum amount of money here, right?
Right.
So within this standpoint, we want to let this money grow as much as possible, and that's why that surrender period is there. Now, the cool thing though is you only have to wait 10 to 15 years. In comparison to a 401k, within that standpoint, now you have to wait until you're 59 and a half to finally have access to your money. Now you're 19. Would you rather wait 10 to 15 years or wait an extra 40 years?
10 to 15.
100%. And we understand that with our clients because, hey, if you need access to your money, we understand it's your money. Like, we want you to have access to that. So waiting 10 to 15 years is so much of a smaller time frame than having to wait 59 and a half. But again, we just suggest, hey, the more you wait and not touch it, the more you're going to have for retirement, right? But again, the next one is we have a component that's called cost of insurance and admin fees. And here's what this means, right? Let's just say you're putting $100 a month into one of these savings accounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way it works is roughly, let's just say, to keep numbers simple, 30% of that $100 will go into your life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining money, which in this case is 70%, which is $70, will be going into your savings. Now there's a reason for this, but just to be clear, a percentage of your money pays life insurance because it's 2, right? And the rest of your money goes into the savings. Now, the reason for that I will break down in a short sense, but I just want you to understand that that's how that works. A percentage of the money goes here, and the remaining, which is usually the majority of it, goes into your savings, which grows interest, which I'm going to talk about next. The way these accounts have been performing are in a bad market. That means when the market goes negative, in a 401k, you go negative with it. Here, The bad market, the lowest you can perform is anywhere between a 0% or a 0.75% floor. That means if the market goes negative, you're going to stay at a 0. You never lose. Now, because I showed you the bad, usually they have the best that they can do, which is in some cases a cap.
Right.
But our caps in some of these accounts are, like I talked about, 15 to 25%. So that means you're going to participate anywhere between 0 to 15 to 25. Anything in between is what they're going to credit you in interest. Now, the cool thing about these accounts is they're averaging. And when you're looking into investment, you really want to focus in on what this account's been performing on an average. So the way we get this average is in a 25-year look-back period. So within the last 25 years plus, these accounts have been performing 7 to 8%. So like we talked about, if I have a client who's putting all their money into the bank, maybe it's $100, $200, $500 a month, then we can find them an account where they can now average 7 to 8. It's a no-brainer. They'll most likely want to reallocate those funds.
Right.
But now, I'm going to talk about the icing on the cake of why your clients love this account. Because now we want to talk about the money here, right? The money that you're going to be saving. The reason why this account is so great is because what if I told you that all the money that you're saving that's growing within interest is all 100% tax-free when you're ready to use it? And here's why, okay? The reason why this 100% money is tax-free is because the IRS has a tax code. It's called the IRC 7702. And what this states is that no life insurance account can be taxed. So now we go back to here, cost of insurance and admin fees. So because a small percentage of your money is going into the life insurance, and the majority of your money, the way we structure it, is going into the savings, when you're ready to touch your retirement money, because it's considered a life insurance account and you have a small portion of money going into the life insurance, all of this money when you're ready to use is 100% tax-free. Does that make sense? Now, based off of this, Santiago, a lot of my clients, and when I sit with them, I show them their options, right? And my job is to always make sure that I can cross their T's and dot their I's. So regardless if they have a great savings and investment account, I always want to make sure we can protect it. Remember, right? What if something like a heart attack, stroke, any of these things occur? This is why this comes into play. For example, the reason why I own both of these accounts is for this reason alone. Because here, in my sense, God forbid I get any cancer, heart attack, stroke, or whatever, the last thing I want to do is have to touch this money. Why? Right? We created this account for our clients to grow and save for retirement, not for God forbid I get sick. Does that make sense? So how do we keep this from going into my God forbid I get sick pile? By having a proper life insurance with living benefits. Because God forbid I get sick, any of these things, I'm not using this money to fund or to take care of me. I'm using this money to take care of me. And what I did here is I crossed my T's and I dotted my I's. Now, based off of this, right, what I do for my clients is figure out within their cases what their budget is. And within that budget, does it make sense to contribute into both, right? So for example, if a client says, hey, my discretionary income is about $300 a month for my insurable needs, can we, let's just say, put $250 into something like this, $50 into something like this, and within their insurable needs, take care of both. Does that make sense? So my client fully would be taken care of in the standpoint of if anything was to happen to them, their retirement is taken care of, and also they're taken care of when it comes down to this. So now, any questions on any of that so far?
No, not at all.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So here's what I want to do next. Okay, Santiago, is the way we figure out more or less how this is going to fit within your portfolio is by filling out some information. Now, here's what I mean, okay? So, based off what we went over today, I want to gather some quick information to show you, for example, what it would look like if we ran you some illustrations, right? What it would look like if you were to put X amount of dollars into into a product where it'll show you, based off of this amount, I will have X amount here. Right? Or what it would look like in either of these. Now, to do that, what I want to do is show you some illustrations to show you what it would look like with actual numbers based off of yourself.
Right.
Okay? So some of the quick stuff that I want to ask you is, for example, your name in this case, Santiago. Now, the next question is now going back to here, okay? Which is, for example, here's how we figure out the number aspect, right? Because this is super important. The last thing I want to do is put you in a financial bind. Our job is to help you make money, not put you in a worse position.
Right.
Put you in a great position, not a worse one. So how do we figure out what the right amount is on your budget, right? Or in this case, what more or less would you be able to qualify for? So this is go based off of imaginary or realistic numbers based off of when you started yours. So if I was to ask you right now, take home, or right now take home on a monthly basis, how much money would you say you bring home on a monthly basis?
I would say 1,200.
Okay, so we got 2,200. Now we have, that's how much typically that you make on a monthly basis. So a good saver understands, or rule of thumb is, they should be saving around 10% of that monthly earned income into whatever, right? Saving 10% of your money is a pretty common, understandable thing. So let's just say you were to put 10% of this away for an investment or for savings or whatever, that'll roughly be anywhere between about 120 bucks, right? Now, we can most likely either look at numbers based off of that, because it's only 10%, or what we call our discretionary. So for example, and they're both important. So when you make this $1,200 on a monthly basis, what would you say is after major expenses, food, mortgage, rent, car, insurance, whatever, how much would you say is left over?
I would say about 800.
Okay, so 800. So here's what we look at from here. Okay, we know we're working with in this standpoint your budget anywhere between, let's just say 10% of this or 10% of 800, which is more or less the range. What would make sense for you is anything. I want to show you illustrations from $120 to $80 on a monthly basis and see what we can do with this type of money into something like this, that now we understand what's going to be a comfortable monthly amount for you to either start saving or for insurable needs, or maybe even both tied into this, right? So within that standpoint, what I want to do is show you what some illustrations would look like based off of your 10%, okay? Which is ideally not going to crush you, right? But would you say that's a pretty good dollar amount, figure amount that you would want to see some illustrations on?
Yeah, I would see why not.
Okay, perfect. So here's what I want to do, Santiago. It'll probably take me, I would say, maybe a couple of days just to do my homework, run some illustrations. But one would be another day we can find a time to get together to kind of go over these illustrations, show you what they would look like in number format. I mean, how many days, or today's Friday, what did you say, maybe next Friday, when's your next day off? So we can get back together to show you some of these illustrations.
We could do Monday.
Okay, next Monday? Perfect. So next Monday, let's go next Monday. You want to do same time, like around 2?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, perfect. Around 2 p.m. Just so I can write that down on my calendar for later. But here's really what I want to do. I want to run some illustrations, do my homework, show you what this accounts would look like for you, right? And if everything makes sense, right? Everything fits within your budget and everything aligns, we go from there.
Okay.
Right? Awesome. Now, my last final thing. Is there any other questions based off of anything we went over today?
No. That was really informative.
Awesome. I like that. So then from here, what we'll do is, like we said, we'll meet next Monday. We'll have all these illustrations ready, and then we'll kind of go from there.
All right, sweet. Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Thank you. So just based off of that,